And so what I'd like to know is, what is a learning that you've had in your life that resulted from a pretty painful misstep?
So my biggest misstep and well, learning because of a misstep has been kind of twofold, and it's kind of a misstep of me and a misstep of my father.
Mm.
So I my father recently passed away. Actually, when we flew to Germany, I didn't know that my dad was sick, and when we landed in Germany, I got the news that he had died.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it was due to complications from COVID, and that's it's a hard time in life, but I'm so glad that me and my dad were able to build a really good relationship, because early on I joked about how I was the hired. My dad was never home because he was in construction, because that's the norm, sadly, in our
Yep.
industry, that fathers are not there because they're working 70, 80, 90, 100-hour work weeks, and then
Yep.
to deal and cope with that, they're, you know, drinking and wasting their lives away, and families are suffering. and
Yes.
and I'm so touched by I forget who it is. I don't know if you're part of this, but the suicide prevention stuff in our industry, it's so important, and we need to keep talking about that. And all
Yes.
these things that we're talking about have a big impact on that, and I believe that we are going to help change that. But my father and I had a really rocky relationship because he was never there, right? I think sadly that's a typical thing for kids that grow up with fathers in the trades or in construction. And at least I've heard that a lot from others. I don't know if it's a majority or whatever,
Sure.
but my biggest misstep was that I blamed my father for what I called a poor childhood. And I was not this energetic and lively and happy when I was a kid. I was, I talked about being in a band. I was that rebellious, like hated, like I was in a really negative, dark space. And my misstep was my my grandma died. We had some, death in the family, deaths in the air, right? And when you're faced with what the reality is of life, and you have to come to terms with, we have a finite time here on this planet. Whether you believe in an afterlife or not, there is a finite time on this planet. And I I was horrible to my father, and the only thing he did was that he was working really hard and he was away. And I treated him like absolute dog crap.
Mhm.
And I am I am so happy that I was able to mend that relationship before he died at what I believe to be a young age. He was 65, which I
Mm.
think is a little bit young, and it was sudden. But there's a lot of my family who didn't forgive my father. And when we boil life down to what's important in those moments where you have, sickness, illness, death, serious things that happen in life, the extra money that you made on working on a Saturday, all the stuff you spend the money on, all this other stuff, it's not even like a thing that's that you even think about. It like has no meaning. and
Mm.
and the only thing that does matter is family. And I've spent a long time designing myself to be a better man and a better father in the ways that I felt my dad wasn't a good father. And I am striving to fill the shoes of a man that I love so dearly, that despite of those shortcomings that I faulted him for as a teenager, wish and hope to even come close to, because he's such an amazing man. And I personally believe, because of my religious beliefs, that I will see him again. And that's been something that I've been so grateful that I've been able to grow into, because I wasn't really super religious in my dark times. And that's been a learnings for me, is focusing on the spiritual and the different things in life. When I landed in Germany and we got to hang out with these folks, I was living my life and I was smiling and I was happy, because I believe that I will see my father again. And these Germans, and we went to Sweden, the Swedens and the Norwegians that we hung out with, they all like asked, like, Jason and Felipe, why is Spencer okay? Like, does he need to go back home? And I was like, no, the funeral is when I get back. Like, they coordinated it because my mom had COVID, and so we had to, so I was like, okay, I'll stay and then I'll come back. I'm like, why? Did he not? Was he not close to his dad? He's like, no, they were actually super close. And it's because of my faith that I didn't lose my shit when my dad died. And that's been my biggest learning, because I've always been kind of an emotional wreck, and to understand how to harness that and not ostracize and hurt the people that I really do love, like I did as a kid. And that has been the biggest learning and that I've had because of those missteps as a youth. And it goes back to what we said earlier about what's important to focus on. It's that respect for people. I didn't have that respect for my father, because he was doing the gosh darn darndest to provide a good life for me, and I was very disrespectful and didn't honor him in that, because he was trying to do his best, and I couldn't see past my own pride and me, right? I was so focused on me, and he didn't give me what I want, daddy issues over here, right?
Yep.
So that's been my biggest learning from that childhood misstep that has taken me a long time to learn. And even today, like I'm worried that I will cause my children that type of stress. So I'm constantly just like analyzing that and trying to figure out how to make sure that I'm a better person than what I was as a child. So there you go.
That's amazing, Spencer. I appreciate you being so transparent and vulnerable with us, and the way you're celebrating life